one man, one vote. Over the past 3 decades, the individual right to vote has been consistently challenged by escalating tactics designed to deny individuals votes who were not considered worthy. In American history, those who were not considered worthy were blacks, poor whites, and females. For the first 200 years, minority groups have fought and died for the right to vote. Men of the majority culture have passed numerous laws to skirt regulations aimed at protecting the individual right to vote. Some of the areas include literacy tests, designed to test your level of education. Blacks in slavery days were not allowed to read, therefore they didn't have very much education. Many poor whites in rural America could not read either, not qualifying for the literacy laws. Some whites were allowed to be grandfathered in, which meant if their grandfather was able to vote, they were able to vote. Blacks were not allowed this opportunity because many of their grandparents were still slaves. Complicated residence requirements and property ownership again excluded many blacks and poor people from the ability to vote. Some southern states have initiated a poll tax, again to deny blacks and poor people the right to vote. This was set up because of a controversial election in 1894, when blacks and poor whites who were allowed to vote banded together to change leadership with that one vote. The platform of many Republicans states pit states' rights over federal rights. As they did from 1776 to the Voter Rights Act of 1965, many states have shown they are not responsible for protecting the rights of individual citizens. The Voter Rights Act established a federal panel of 3 judges to pre-clear any changes in voting laws, and states shall suppress the votes of their citizens. As rational as the Voters' Right Act is, many are lobbying for its repeal. The argument for repealing started in Georgia in 2006. They feel that it has been too long and it is unfair for states to still be subjected to pre-clearance laws after numerous changes in practices of voter suppression. Certain provisions of the Voters' Right Act have come up for renewal recently as 2006. With bipartisan support, the act is not repealed. Still, attempts have been made over the years, as it is today, to alter the outcome of the elections through the denial of individual votes. And attempts have been underway to remove provisions in the law that allow bilingual ballots to be cast. A clear example to suppress the immigrant vote. The use of a poll tax has again risen in the form of photo identification. Similar to the poll tax, enforcing the purchase of photo ID disenfranchises the poor, the young, and the elderly. All 3 of these groups are targeted as likely voting blocks for the current president. Republican leadership cites voter fraud as a reason to require photo ID. Numerous surveys by Republicans, Independents, and Democrats have refuted this law and discounted voter fraud as a viable reason to change these laws. Since the election of President Obama, 35 states have passed laws requiring some type of identification. Currently, the cost of a driver's license ranges from $24 to $48. A few states have amended their photo ID to allow other types of other forms of ID ranging from a certified copy of birth, which can be as much as $45, to a passport, which can be as much as $85. It is apparent that the fight for individual votes is just as important today as it was when we founded this country. For centuries, the poor, African American, non-white, and female have fought for the right to vote. Today, it is the fight just to get these groups to show up at the poll. In the 2008 election, voter turnout was the highest in decades. Women led all minority groups with 53% showing up at the poll, altering 14% of African Americans and 9% of Hispanics even bothered to vote. I recently stopped at a restaurant for lunch. I listened to 4 youngsters working behind the counter to discuss the upcoming election. One African American young lady was recounting her reason for not voting. She was talking to a young African American male, and she said the reason she didn't vote was because her vote didn't count. Her vote didn't count because they stuffed the ballot box, and whoever they wanted in office is who they put in office. The young African American male didn't really agree with her, but he didn't push the position. turned to two Hispanic friends who were also working behind the camera. She asked them about their reason for voting. Both of them said they were not eligible to vote. If they could, they would. Never in my life had I wanted to stop and in parts of listening to a stranger as I had that day. If the election of a black Democrat is not evidence of the power of the individual vote, then maybe she should read the contentious and expensive political fight ongoing in the country. With the coming together of individuals who are poor, black, female, and carry Barack Obama to the Black House. The election of 2012 has many similarities to Civil War era voting practices. The male-white establishment is once again banding together to suppress the voting power of the black, non-white, and the poor. The Republicans have one choice. They have one chance to retake the Oval Office, to retake the Senate, and to hold on to the House. And that is to keep the young, black, poor, and the female from voting. Thank you. Are there any questions? This is something that a lot of people have discussed. If you remember during the Bush election, Bush actually did not win the popular vote. Okay? He lost that. And the electoral votes for all the states, electoral votes were allowed him to get into office. So yes, I do believe if we allow the popular vote, George Bush will never have been president.
All right, I have a question. In voter ID laws, franchise for blind people, some states have to have.
Well, the problem we have is when we do not vote, we become a voice that they don't have to listen to. If you think about the elderly, the reason they listen to them is because that is the highest rate that goes out and votes. Imagine if all the college kids in America got out to vote. How much could you convince politicians to listen to you if they knew they had reason to vote? They know that young people don't vote, so why pay attention?
Without voter ID, how do we know voting fraud is not happening?
I think that's really simple because if you look at the numbers, in America, we vote the lowest numbers of any country in the world. It's hard enough to get us to go to the polls normally, so I can imagine people going to the poll more than once to create fraud.
Do you think the age limit of voting should change?
Well, if you look at that, the age limit back in I believe it was the early 70s was 21. And the reason it always changed is because of Vietnam. I mean, the thought process was if I'm a young man, I'm 18 years old, I can die for my country. Why can't I vote for the politicians who are sending me to die for my country? So the voting law is 18 is good.
If minorities vote in small numbers, how does new voter ID laws affect the election?
Well, I think what's important is your individual vote as a group is important. As I mentioned before, we have 14% of us show up. Imagine how much we could change this vote if 70% of us show up. We may not ever be a majority in this country, but if we're important enough voting bloc, it will start this.